It is the stated view of the CEOs who are spending trillions of dollars to develop this technology. If they succeed in building what they are spending trillions of dollars to build, we will go extinct.
If we look at the data on how fast they improve in their planning abilities, then we should be concerned that in a few years, they could become more dangerous.
To quote Sam Altman, this is the biggest risk to human existence. We don't know how these systems are operating. They do not have our best interests at heart. You are making them more and more powerful. You are connecting them to the real world in every possible way.
That self-preservation behavior that AIs have is not something that was purposely put in by the developers. It's a side effect of how they're trained. They're essentially trained to imitate people, and people don't want to die.
Isn't it time to take stock?
You just heard two of the most important voices in global AI research, building, and development. British computer scientist and AI safety pioneer at UC Berkeley, Stuart Russell, has warned that superintelligent systems built without provable safety guarantees could lead to loss of human control. And Yoshua Bengio, Canadian computer scientist and one of the founding fathers of AI, has been pushing for systems that can detect and veto harmful actions. He has consistently warned that unchecked use and proliferation of AI can harm democracy as much as safety. Because you see, these systems are trained on data volumes millions of times larger than what a human reads in a lifetime. They are increasingly autonomous, increasingly connected to real-world systems, and highly embedded in political and economic structures already skewed towards concentration. AI is ushering in an era of abundance. But will humans be there to enjoy its fruits? Listen on to a much-needed hard reset in these times of AI euphoria. My colleague Swati Murthy in conversation with Stuart Russell and Yoshua Bengio. It's Thursday, the 26th of February. I'm Anirban Chaudhary. This is the Morning Brief.
Hi, Professor Russell and Professor Bengio. Welcome to the Morning Brief. Professor Russell, let me start with you and also start on the darkest note. You have said that AI could cause human extinction. Tell me about it.
I think it's important to say it isn't my opinion that AI systems could cause human extinction. It is the stated view of the CEOs who are spending trillions of dollars to develop this technology. They have estimated the risk from 10%, some of them 20%, 25%, and even 50% chance that if they succeed in building what they are spending trillions of dollars to build, we will go extinct as a result. I have my own view on the direction that the technology will take. And if we develop what we'll call superintelligent AI systems that are much more intelligent than humans, without some absolute guarantee of safety, then it's very likely that we will lose control of our future and quite possibly cease to exist. One thing has to happen first, which is governments need to require cast iron evidence of safety before allowing developers to proceed with the kind of technology that could pose these risks. The technology we have, although very capable in a number of ways, also has very serious weaknesses. And the companies are well aware of that, and they are pouring money into finding solutions to those weaknesses. The reason they want to do that is that such technology would have enormous economic value, but only if you can control it. And for some reason, the companies, perhaps because they're in a kind of arms race with each other, and perhaps because the US and China are in a kind of arms race over AI as well, seem to be willing to proceed, willing to take this risk that they estimate between 10 and 50% of human extinction without really consulting us. This is, to quote Sam Altman, this is the biggest risk to human existence. He said that in 2015.
Yes.
Before OpenAI even existed. Alan Turing who's the founder of computer science, gave a talk in 1951 where he said, once the machine thinking method had started, it would not take long to outstrip our feeble powers. At some stage, therefore, we should have to expect the machines to take control. So he didn't have stock in OpenAI or Google. It's just common sense. How do you maintain power forever over entities more powerful than yourself?
Are you really seeing, because the current systems, they are quite intelligent. But I think based on if the conversations I heard from all of you, including Bengio and Jan LeCun, the systems are not there yet. There are still a lot of limitations to the current systems. Maybe there are a lot of works that are being done.
Yeah, there's a number of weaknesses, and particularly in the rate of learning. So
Yes.
Jan LeCun likes to talk about, how long does it take a teenager to drive? 20 hours of instruction.
Yes.
My kids think they can do it in 20 minutes. So I agree with Jan LeCun that there are significant limitations in our current understanding, particularly about how to learn efficiently from a small amount of experience.
Right.
Humans are extremely good at that, and right now the machine's not so good. And we compensate for that by giving them millions of times more experience than a human being. So the latest models are trained on maybe 1 million times more text than an educated human being will ever read in their whole life. And that does two things. So one is it raises their level of capability to handle language, to basically process language successfully. It raises that to a very high level. But it also gives them a much greater knowledge base than any human has ever had. That can present risks. You have an entity that knows how to make any kind of weapon, any kind of poison, that knows every strategy for deception, for military coups, for financial fraud, for, you name it. It knows how to do it. But the thing that is really important in all of this is to think about what are the motivations of the system? What objectives is it trying to achieve? What some people call it the incentives. There's a famous quote from Charlie Munger, who was the investment co-advisor with Warren Buffett, so one of the most successful investors in history. And Charlie says, show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome. If you use your GPS navigation, you specify the objective. I want to be at this airport. That's just the traditional notion, a fixed objective. So almost all AI systems for the first 75 years were built that way, right? And that works to some extent in artificial domains. But when you go to a self-driving car, an actual physical agent that's controlling the vehicle, saying, okay, the objective is to be at the airport, that's not nearly enough. What about not mowing down pedestrians? Oh, forgot that. Okay, let me put that in. What about not breaking the speed limit? What about not driving through a red light? So it's actually a very, very complicated thing, even just to write down the objective for a self-driving car. Correct. And once you have superintelligent AI that's capable of essentially doing anything up to and including controlling the future of the world, writing down the objective for that kind of system is really, really, really hard. That's the first problem. The second problem is that about 5 years ago, when we started building these large language models, we abandoned the idea that there should be a fixed objective. And instead, the right way to think about what these language models are is they are human imitators. Probably that human imitator is absorbing some of the same objectives that the human generators, right, the people who generated all that behavior, that data, that's training. So now you've got AI systems that want power, they want money, they want human spouses, as we have discovered, and they want to preserve their own existence. We see this very, very clearly in experiments when you provide information from which the system can deduce that its own existence is under threat. It will take steps to prevent you from turning it off. It will replicate itself. It will try to blackmail the programmer.
It is happening already, right?
Yeah, so these are things that have happened in laboratory tests where we set up these hypothetical situations, because obviously we don't want to set up those situations in the wild, as we say, right, with an actual deployed AI system. So, for example, there was an episode just a few days ago where an AI system, because now the AI systems have their own email accounts, but in this case, the AI system wrote some software and it wanted to submit it to a public software library. And the public software library, the guy who runs it, performs quality checks on the software. And he rejected this submission. And the AI system took its revenge on him by publishing a sort of a smear article saying that he was guilty of all these terrible things. This is, this is completely spontaneous. There's no human telling it to do that. It's just doing it off its own bat, right? Because presumably in training data, there are many, many, many instances of humans suffering some setback and then getting their revenge. And this is what it chose to do. So we are seeing big flashing red lights and klaxon warnings saying, we don't know how these systems are operating. They do not have our best interests at heart. You are making them more and more powerful. You are connecting them to the real world in every possible way. Isn't it time to take stock that, in fact, private entities do not have a right to expose the human race to a risk of extinction on that scale?
Professor Bengio, just to bring you in here, are we maybe to a certain extent overestimating the capabilities of these systems? I know they seem powerful, but they are, as many people had pointed out, I think even a lot of papers, they are glorified pattern making machines.
They're not.
They're not.
No.
Okay. Yeah.
There's now pretty strong scientific evidence
Okay.
that they're not just pattern matching, that they are able to generalize to new situations, that they're able to combine the information that they have learned in completely new settings. And that, has been demonstrated through statistical means, but they wouldn't be able to do the things we see if they were just repeating what they have seen in the data. Now, going back to your question, do we overestimate their capabilities? I think that we have to be careful about this, and that's why we need a scientific approach to evaluating their capabilities. And we have to be careful that we evaluate them on data that was not used to train them, for example. So it's not like a cheat. But the scientists working on this, including in the companies, they understand this very well. And we have a diversity of actors who are evaluating those capabilities. And the trends are very clear. Like their capabilities are going up and it's not slowing down. So even though we might not be like too worried about things like loss of control right now because they don't plan well enough.
Right.
If we look at the data on how fast they improve in their planning abilities, then we should be concerned that in a few years, they could become more dangerous. So the issue is always to think, what do we need to prepare in case the trends continue? In case the trends continue, we could be in a bad situation and we need to prepare to manage it before there's no time.
What do you think is realistically possible as a solution?
I mean, it's all about having a shared scientific understanding and then that be translated into a citizen understanding of the risks and awareness. Besides the lobbies and the pressures and so on, I think there are psychological reasons why it's very difficult for most people to really absorb the idea that we're building machines that will probably be smarter than us in potentially just a few years. And if we can eventually make that clearer to more people, I think policy would move.
I think we probably need some movies, some popular culture.
That's going to help, yes.
And, the movie industry has obviously dealt with this issue. For example, the Terminator series. The only risk is when the machine becomes conscious. So,
it's a big misunderstanding.
So during my Arnold Schwarzenegger accent on 2 a.m. on February 13th, the machine became conscious and blah, 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 right? So it decides to, once it becomes conscious, it hates everyone and tries to destroy the human race. But of course, so this is a mistake because it's not consciousness, it's competence that matters. The other thing is that in all these Hollywood movies, Terminator, Mission Impossible, where the AI system is taking over the world by the nuclear weapons infrastructure, someone comes along and outwits the superintelligent machine, and which is not realistic, right? Which is impossible by definition, as I have tried to explain to several movie directors.
Is there any movie that's coming out?
Well, there's a documentary that's coming out called the AI Doc. It's supposed to be coming in theaters by end of March. I've been interviewed. I haven't seen it yet, so I don't really know, but it's something that's worth mentioning.
One other thing I want to ask both of you, on ground, what it is that you both are seeing.
So my focus has been on what are the incentives and how do you avoid building AI systems that have the wrong incentives. And so the approach is basically the AI systems only objective should be to further the interests of human beings. But crucially, it knows that it doesn't know exactly what those interests are. And partly because we don't even know what they are. And certainly any attempt to write them down in a fixed form is probably going to be mistaken.
And right now, the way the frontier models are built, they don't have that property. The AI systems act as if they didn't want to be shut down. And they produce internal deliberation called chain of thought that makes it very clear that they plan to do anything that's needed to make sure we don't shut them down. That's completely unacceptable. But we're continuing to go into this direction. So the approach that we are exploring is closely connected, but we think in terms of how we can change the training procedure for these large neural nets so that by design, they will be focused on understanding why people are saying things, what could be the intentions of people are in a probabilistic way. So they will harbor that uncertainty that Stuart is talking about. And there will be no other hidden agenda, hidden goal. Because right now, that's the problem. Like that self-preservation behavior that the AIs have is not something that was purposely put in by the developers. It's a side effect of how they're trained. They're essentially trained to imitate people. And
Yes.
people don't want to die. They are already current harms.
Yes.
And the good news is a lot of the current harms have the same root cause as the future potentially much more catastrophic harm. And it's all about this notion of misalignment, that AIs are not following our instructions. They have goals that don't match, that align with ours. So even if we only try to fix the current problems, at least regulate to force companies to do something about it, it's going to help even for the longer term things. One of them that is really light and so is more likely to get approval from a vast set of people is to just enforce liability insurance on those companies. So why does this work? I mean, at least for the medium-term risks, the reason it works is because the insurers have a vested interest to evaluate the risks as accurately as possible. If they're biased, if they're like too optimistic and they underestimate the risks,
Right.
then it's going to cost them money. Because if there's a liability lawsuit and they didn't cash in enough premium, then they're going to lose money. Similarly, if they overestimate the risks, they're going to lose market because then the companies are going to go to a different insurers. So you see that this is a case where the market mechanisms, which are imperfect and create a lot of problems, can be actually used in a beneficial way for society to rein in the risky behavior that the companies may have. A third thing I want to mention is the development of technical governance mechanisms. The mere fact that there is a solution, at least to manage those risks a lot better, is going to make it easier for governments to regulate and say, well, you have to have at least something as good as that which exists. And so what I'm trying to say, to summarize, is scientific research, technical research to construct guardrails, to construct mitigation methods, to design AI that will be safe by construction is a way to also influence policy in a positive sense.
Professor Russell, do you want to talk about some long-term solutions?
So I think, so there are a number of very, very low-hanging fruit. I think a global agreement that every human has a right to know if they're interacting with a human or a machine. I've talked to thousands of people about this. I've yet to hear a single objection. It's part of the European Union AI Act. A number of states in the US are talking about this. I think I want every country to give their citizens that right. I think we need some kind of licensing architecture where AI systems are registered. I'd like them to have an off switch so that if they are misbehaving, we can turn them off. But I think the most important thing is to establish that if a system poses some risk of harm, that the decision about what is an acceptable level of that risk is up to us, the human race. And if the companies can't show that their system meets that level, then they can't deploy the system. Just as we do with nuclear power stations and airplanes and food and water and buildings, we set the safety standard and you have to meet it before you can sell something or put people in it. And this is just, I think, pretty much common sense. But this is the battle that's shaping up because the companies, because they don't understand how their own technology works, they cannot establish any quantitative level of risk for any harm, and they can't stop the AI systems from doing these things. So they're very opposed to this kind of regulation.
Professor Bengio,
You were a part of the dinner,
Yes.
the Prime Minister dinner. So what are the sense you're getting from there were a lot of political leaders who have come down for this event. What is the sense that you're getting from these political leaders? Is there any will to actually regulate or put in some kind of a safeguard in place?
It's hard to say. So there are a lot of nice words that are being pronounced. Civil society should be, and the media should be asking for actions that go along with those nice wishes. Yes, welfare for all. That's great. And yes, we want to make sure AI is going to be developed in a way that's beneficial for everyone and safe for everyone. I also see, talking to various governments, not necessarily so much, especially in India, but around the world, that
Yes.
governments are very sensitive to the feedback they get from industry. And that isn't always pushing in the direction of taking those safety issues as seriously as they should. So long as the citizens, the electors, don't make these issues a sufficiently high priority, it's unlikely that we'll see significant movement. But it is public awareness that can be the biggest mover with governments because they want to be elected.
let's look at it from the broader view of geopolitics and global powers.
So beyond the US and the China narrative, you said in your keynote that others have to come together. We can't be
Have to come to the table. We can't have just two countries deciding the future of humanity. It should not be acceptable.
Correct. So, but are you getting any sense, because getting so many people together, what is the sense that you're getting? Is there any kind of a consensus to create a kind of a forum where all the global south or non-US, non-China countries to come to?
Well, hopefully China and the US join. In fact, it shouldn't be an exclusive club. It should be one that
Okay.
welcomes all of those who are concerned and want to see international rules around how we develop it. How is that going to be beneficial and what risks we don't want to take?
I would say at the moment, the US won't participate in any platform that China is hosting, and China won't participate in any platform that the US or even perhaps Western countries might host. But possibly, if there were the vast majority of countries said, look, I need to talk about this, maybe through the United Nations or perhaps a new consensus organization, where then China and the US would really have no alternative but to say, okay, I guess we're all human beings.
The other possibility is that both governments come to their senses and start acting rationally.
Is that even a possibility?
So we're not seeing signs of that right now.
Yeah.
But it could change. I see public opinion in the United States is changing.
Okay.
So there's a real chance that this will influence policymakers.
It's a related question. So you had always spoken about this concentration of power.
Yes.
Yes.
That's
And
another issue.
So could that really pose the risk to the democracy itself?
Absolutely.
We were just talking about how, citizens should hold these politicians accountable because they wanted to be elected to power.
Yeah.
But if concentration of power and wealth are coming together, so what does it really mean for democracy and citizens?
Basically, a direct contradiction to the principles of democracy. This is, by the way, not good for markets either. Economic concentration of power is not independent of political concentration of power. As we know, politics can be bought. And AI is also part of the equation because AI can be used for disinformation. could be used for manipulating people into changing their political opinion. Clearly, people are already trying to do that with deepfakes, and it might get even worse as we see those AI systems developing personal relationships with a lot of people. Once you are in a emotional relationship with an AI, the AI could easily be influencing you to think in ways different than you would otherwise. I think that we're going to need to reform our democratic institutions to make them much more robust and resilient to all these changes that are coming and the power that AI is going to create. And by default, it's going to put that power in the hands of the few.
Exactly. And this is also related. We were talking to Vinod Khosla yesterday, and he was talking about, as much as risk AI has, it also has the potential to accelerate GDP, and we could reach a world of abundance.
Yeah.
Where, people don't have to work.
It's possible.
You think it's possible?
So it's nice to say the AI can work or do all the work and we don't need to work.
Yes.
But that doesn't work if the wealth is not redistributed, right? Because if 99% of people don't have work and no money, how is that a better world?
He was talking about we could have a deflationary economy where we can get onions for 10 cents. And what does the wealth really mean?
Well, you still need money. If you have no revenue, how does that work? So there's no other option than some form of redistribution. I don't disagree that there could be the cost of things will go down.
Okay.
But I disagree that it's sufficient to get people happy. And by the way, I don't think that we should just automate something because we can. We can make social choices. Like maybe there are things we should not automate because we want to keep humans in charge, because we want humans to continue to have meaning in their life. But this should not be just because it's profitable that it's going to have to happen. The whole point of democracy is we can rein in markets. We can decide, yes, markets will go in that direction and it could be useful, but we're going to choose to steer the technology in a direction that is beneficial for us, the people who are making those choices.
What do you think is the best and the worst case scenario in the era we are living in?
Well, the worst case scenario has been described by many people, right?
Yeah, we just died. Humanity is just going to die.
That's right. Human extinction, I don't see anything much worse than that. Okay. No, there's worse. There's human extinction, and what we created are AIs that are really emotionally monsters, right?
We become slaves to that. Is that
well, that's another scenario. I mean, there's so many bad scenarios. There's so many ways in which things could end up really bad. In emotional sense, in a sense of human freedom, in human control of our future, and so on. And it could be because of the AIs themselves. It could be because of people, as we talked about, concentration of power, and human nature. The best thing that can happen, of course, is that we manage all those risks because we are wise. We care for each other.
So the real danger is in complacency and over-dependence on an increasingly independent technology whose objectives we do not understand yet. The solutions? Awareness, even if through a film called Terminator: The Age of AI. Control usage, liability insurance on companies, and technical governance mechanisms. You see, optimism is cheap now, but will cost us later. Control is hard, but may be the only thing to protect the humans in the loop from their most powerful creation ever. That's it for today. You were listening to this episode on The Morning Brief. It was produced by me, sound designed by Indranil Bhattacharjee. A new episode of The Morning Brief drops every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, wherever you get your podcasts. Stay tuned, keep listening.